Now we're going to look at temperature conversions. In science, we generally use temperature units that aren't used in everyday life in America. So in the USA, we are still on standard types of units. So we usually get our temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. But like the rest of the world, they use metric or scientific measurements, and those are usually done in Celsius or Kelvin. So you may have times where you're going to have to convert between a temperature in Celsius, Kelvin, Fahrenheit. So you're going to have to know how to convert between those three temperatures. They're very simple formulas that you should memorize. So the first one is when you're going into degrees Celsius from degrees Fahrenheit. So to get degrees Celsius, you're going to do 5/9, and then you're going to multiply that by the Fahrenheit temperature you are given, minus 32. We're going to remember our operations, our order of operations, in that you're going to do the Fahrenheit minus 32 before you do the 5/9 multiplication. Remember, you do parentheses first. In case you're wondering, this 5/9, the equivalent to that is very simply 0.555. If you just want to remember that decimal point, that should get you the right answer if you just remember that instead of the fraction. Or you can use it as a fraction. It's totally up to you. If you want to go the other way and go from Celsius to Fahrenheit, so now we're going to solve 4 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to do kind of the opposite. So you're going to do 9/5 times the degrees Celsius. Notice it's in parentheses, so that's what you're going to do first. And then you're going to add 32. And then the value of the 9/5, if you're looking for that, if you'd rather do a fraction or a decimal instead of a fraction, is 1.8. So very simply, it's a matter of plugging in if you're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So as long as you have those units and those formulas in your head, it should be quite simple. Now remember, degrees Kelvin is something we use a lot in chemistry. It is just a K. It is just a capital K. It has no degree sign. Remember, that is based on the idea of absolute zero. So that's the idea where it's a theoretical temperature that at exactly 0 Kelvin, all particle motion has stopped. So basically things suspend in midair. It's kind of interesting if we could ever manage to see it. But we base most chemistry calculations, or a lot of chemistry calculations, on Kelvin. So to go from Celsius to Kelvin is very, very simple. You add 273. You'll see some places you do 273 with a decimal place, but you can simply just add 273 and get your measurement to Kelvin, and that should work. Notice you can only go from Celsius to Kelvin. If you need to take a Fahrenheit temperature to Kelvin, you're going to have to first put it into degrees Celsius. So we'll start our practice problems here. Notice first we're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So the formula you use is the one you're solving for. So if you see here, I am solving for Celsius, so that is the formula I'm going to use. So degrees Celsius equals 5/9. Then we're just going to plug in our Fahrenheit temperature we were given, 68 minus 32. Remember your order of operations. You're going to do 68 minus 32 first, and then multiply that number by 5/9, or 0.555 would give you the same answer, and you should get 20 degrees Celsius. It's very important that you always put your unit with your answers. So when we look at 20 degrees, you can't just put 20 degrees. That could be Fahrenheit, that could be Celsius. You need to make sure you put your unit there. If we go to the next one, notice we're solving for Fahrenheit. So we're going to use our Fahrenheit formula, which is parentheses 9/5. I'm just going to do a little time sign, times the given Celsius temperature, 37, plus 32. So again, you're going to do this calculation first. The calculation in the parentheses first. That is your order of operations, tells you that. Then you're going to add 32, and you should get about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. I actually put this conversion on there for a reason. 98.6 is normal body temperature, so 37 Fahrenheit or 37 Celsius is probably a good kind of Celsius temperature to give you a little bit of gauge of where the Celsius range is. So 37 degrees Celsius is equal to 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, the next one, we're starting in Fahrenheit. We're going to Celsius again. So I'm going to plug that into my Celsius formula. 5/9 or 0.555, whatever works for you. Parentheses 90, I get that right here, given in the problem, minus 32. So again, I'm going to do this part first. In the parentheses is always first. So I'm going to do 90 minus 32 times 0.555 or 5/9, whatever works for you. And you get 32.2 degrees Celsius. Next, we're having a new unit. We're solving for Kelvin here, and I want you to really notice there is no degree sign with Kelvin. It's just a simple capital K for Kelvin. So if we look at my formula for Kelvin, it is simply the degree Celsius, which is 83, and you very simply add 273 to that, and you should just get a Kelvin temperature of 356 K. Your Kelvin temperature should never be negative. Kelvin doesn't have a negative number. That's a lot of times why we use it in chemistry, because absolute zero Kelvin, you cannot get below that temperature. So you should never have a negative Kelvin. And then finally, we have something a little tricky here. It says 52 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius. Let's change that up a little bit to help us. We're going to go to Kelvin just to practice that. So we're going to go from 52 degrees Fahrenheit to Kelvin. So again, there is, if you look up here at the top, there is no formula from Fahrenheit to Kelvin. So what you have to do is first do Fahrenheit to Celsius and then Celsius to Kelvin. So first you're going to do your degrees Celsius. So my 5/9 times 52 minus 32, and that's going to give me 11 degrees Celsius. And then I go to my Kelvin formula and I do 11 plus 273, and I get 284 Kelvin. Doesn't want to write for me very nicely. There we go. 284 Kelvin. So take home message there. You cannot convert from Fahrenheit to Kelvin. You first have to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius to Kelvin.